Hi guys, um, today's video is going to be part of a series that I'm going to do on working with the fair folk. Today I'm going to focus on working with members of the fair folk that live within the household. I'm going to be looking at more the English, Irish, Scottish folklore. So brownies, they're also known as dobs or master dobs in Sussex, and hobs in Midlands and the North. Brownies is probably the most popular term. An Old English term is also lob, and there's also dobby, which of course links to the Harry Potter house elves, the most well known of which is Dobby. On that note, actually, there is a part in Harry Potter where Dobby gets given clothes, and there's a storyline that isn't in the films, only in the books, where Hermione sets up a protection society for house elves and starts knitting them all clothes, and it turns out that Dobby's been wearing them all because the other house elves are very offended and love their work. This kind of follows through to the folklore. So traditionally, you should never give a house elf or a brownie clothes unless you are releasing them from the house. So if you sorry, just turn the camera. If you do not want to work with them any longer, you do not want them in the house, you can give them clothes, but there are stories that suggest they turn into boggarts if you do that, and may not have to leave the property. There are also stories that back up that some are happy to be freed, and I guess it's kind of a working relationship. It's the same as some people might be happy to be let go from a job, but other people may not be. And I think most commonly, if you enjoy your job, you're not going to want your boss to turn around and tell you that you're leaving that day. So yeah, I think it works like that. So if you look at the elves and the shoemaker, the elves are happy to receive the clothes, but they are never seen again. Now in the elves and the shoemaker, there's more than one elf. Most people and most folklore view brownies as a solitary fairy, and that is historically it's often the case that they were solitary. However, there have been cases that suggest some brownies have worked in pairs or trios. It may be as well that some people may have one brownie that looks after a large house and another that looks after the gardens. But most of the time you will find one. Now these brownies tend to be described as small, wizened, older men with, or older male beings, and they tend to have lots of hair or be covered in short, dark, curly hair. There have been some suggestions in different areas of the country that there are perhaps cousins of the brownie who are incredibly hairy. I'm just going to plunge my coffee. Now, although brownies are very loyal, they are also incredibly temperamental, and like all members of the fair folk, you do need to be conscious of the fact that their culture, I suppose, is different to us. You do not thank them. They work. You can leave offerings in return for their work. Sorry, I'm just trying to sort out this camera. So yes, you can leave offerings in return for their work, but it's on a sort of return basis. So I do something, you do something, a partnership, if you like, as opposed to, you know, a gift. Now, with the offerings, it's well known that brownies are said to like butter. In Ireland, you traditionally leave the cream from the top of the milk on the doorstep, or perhaps on the hearth. It was also tradition to have a stool by the fire for them so that they could warm their feet after a long day's work. That can be a really nice thing to implement in your own home, particularly if you have children. They'll really enjoy that. I have found that brownies respond well to children. They do like to be kept abreast of changes, so you need to tell them if you are pregnant, if you're adopting, if you have children or other people coming to stay. You also need to tell them about home renovations. Anything really that affects your family within the home or the home itself. And of course, kids definitely affect the home itself because they draw on the walls, they accidentally break things. Yeah, they fiddle about with altars, unless it's right up out of their reach, and even then, they may find a stool, climb up, you know. My little one definitely gets into a lot of things that he shouldn't. But yeah, so with the offerings, there are traditions where you would take a stone with a small hole in it, and you would give them the wort, which is like a sugar water really from the brewing process of beer, and you would put that in the hole. Obviously, in modern day, unless you own a brewery or know someone who does, you may want to leave just ale or perhaps a traditionally brewed cider. Especially if you live in that part of the country, it can be really nice to tie it in with where you live, because essentially your home is in that area, and so they are a spirit or a fairy member of the fair folk from that area. So you know, traditionally brewed ciders can be great. Fruit alcohols can be great if you have brewed your own or added something to an alcohol. So perhaps you have taken berries from the garden and made blackberry wine or similar. You may want to leave some of that. Some traditions speak against giving alcohol and say that it can make the fair folk aggressive or a little bit more violent. I personally haven't found that. But then I only leave a small amount, so I guess, you know, if you're leaving gallons of mead, who knows what they'll get up to. But yes, so the stone with the hole in it and a little bit of the sugar water from the beer. Also, so butter, cream off the top of the milk, perhaps a rustic slice of bread and butter. Make sure that it's something you can continue to offer, because they're not going to be happy if you forget. We recently had a period of time where someone comes in to help because I have issues with lifting and things due to an illness and an injury. So we have someone who comes in just to help me with the kind of lifting and physical aspects of childcare sometimes. So anyway, she had ended up opening the milks, and of course she doesn't know that we leave the cream from the top. And so Brownie did not get its cream, and it was not happy. And so many things went missing. So many things went missing. But once we've taken up that routine again, I also explain what happened, because I feel like explaining to them as you would really to a person just keeps that relationship on par. And they're more likely to be slightly more understanding than if you just ignore what happened. Now, when you leave the offering, you don't speak about it. So I said, you know, the person who comes and helps me out, she doesn't know. Oh, we don't make a thing of it. We occasionally might say to one another, oh, could you just pop that over there? Or, you know, have you left the offering recently or whatever. I've also explained to my son what it is, but I feel like that is, it's not singling out an offering, it's not making a big deal, it's not asking for praise for leaving it, it's simply explaining to a child what's going on, because obviously where he is involved in my craft, he has to grow up knowing these things in order to do it himself. So yes, don't speak of the offerings. You'll also find that they take things happening about the house very personally. So if you are knocking through a wall, for example, you need to let them know, because really what you're doing is damaging the house. So even if it's for the house's own benefit, you need to explain that rather than just knocking a wall through, because that's going to upset them otherwise. We've had a lot of issues with our house, which is why I felt it's incredibly important for me to keep up this work with the Brownie, because where I've been ill and stuff, the house, what we've wanted to do to the house hasn't been completed. And we also have a bit of a lack of storage space, so it can get very chaotic, and I'm working to solve that, but it's a long process, and so, you know, my Brownie has to be very patient with me, and I'm very lucky to have one who has been, but I do lose a lot if I don't work on that relationship. And when I say lose a lot, I mean I put down jewellery, disappears. I put down a book, disappears. When we were having this issue with the person who helps us out opening the milks, and therefore the Brownie not having the cream, I lost 3 books that I was reading. We searched the house from top to bottom, couldn't find them. They then turned up on a table where they certainly hadn't been before. So yes. Now, my husband doesn't practice witchcraft, but he fully supports me in the craft, and he has been involved in a couple of my rituals. He completely believes, but he hasn't felt the call to practice himself. So he will leave the offering as well, and therefore has, you know, a relative relationship, if you like, and I can trust that, you know, if I'm not there, he can then leave the cream. We are both of Irish heritage, and therefore have gone more towards the English and Irish ways of looking at and creating the relationship. I've included a ritual about working with the Brownie, and it's really to greet the Brownie and just to begin that relationship, really. Now, some people feel that if they are in a new build house, they will need to invite in a solitary fairy that becomes, oh look, the camera's suddenly lightened. Oh, who knows what's going to happen. Sorry, yeah, I'll continue. So, some people feel if they're in a new build house, they may have to invite in a solitary fairy who will then essentially become a brownie. There's a bit of a dispute between whether a brownie is a particular type of fairy, whether they, when discharged from a house, or if they don't want to be in the house any longer, whether they can leave, and whether they do and then travel to find another home, or whether or not they are essentially the energy of the house, of the home, of the previous inhabitants who have lived there. So if you feel that you need to invite a brownie in, you can do so by creating a small door outside that leads into your house, whether or not you buy one of the created fairy doors, whether or not you make one of the fairy doors, and stick it outside at a low level. That's up to you. You can just as easily use visualization, and that's fine. You do not need to purchase things if you don't want to or don't feel a call to. Equally, if you like purchasing things like that or making things like that, then go for it. It can be a really fun way of pulling your own children into the craft and into working with the Fae. So you can put out that door, you can leave out offerings, and as you leave out the offerings, it'll be what we've already talked about. So the pat of butter, the cream off the top of the milk. Margarine is fine as butter, okay? It tastes great. Everybody eats it. The brownie is not going to expect you to go out, buy other butter. Remember that he is essentially of your home and your family and is coming into, if you're inviting him in, coming into that. So there's no point going and doing something that's unnatural to your family. If you don't use butter, use margarine. So pat of butter or margarine, cream off the top of the milk, the alcohol, so the ale or maybe some mead or something. I don't tend to leave fruit so much for my brownie. I would leave those more for garden members of the fair folk or trooping fairies, which we'll discuss in other videos. So you can leave out the offering and state your intent. Say, my house is empty. We are looking for the presence of a brownie. If you would like, come sup of the offering and enter our house. And if you're doing that night after night, you can then also ask for a sign. So it may be that you would like a certain object moved or to appear somewhere, but it may equally be something like a smell. So you would like the smell of fresh baked bread, the smell of lavender, a homely smell, a reassuring homely smell. And then if you smell that, you will know that they are here and their presence has come. You can also do this for if you're unsure whether or not you have a brownie in your house already. You can ask for this sign. Everybody will see or be aware of fair folk in a completely different way. So if you tend to see them in your peripheral vision at the corner of your eye, then that's fine. You can ask for a sign in that way as well, of course. Any sign that you feel is appropriate is fine. There's also the smell that we talked about. There is the awareness of a presence, just as you would be aware of someone walking into a room behind you that you couldn't see. That feeling where you just know that they're there. And it's work to find out how you personally experience the awareness. There's no right or wrong way. and it may be that you want to go for something like smell if you are not experienced with working with them, but you know that in other cases, perhaps divining or spirit work, you are aware through smell, and that's a strong sense for you. Personally, it's a strong one for me, and that's probably why I mention it. But we have also used the object moving in our house. You can do this for when you meet them, but it is easier to simply call them by knocking on the hearth, on an important, like the most important area in your home where everyone gathers, by the cooker perhaps, or the place where you're going to leave them offerings. I have written a ritual to greet them, which I'll include below. And yeah, the ritual is a great one to do on Samhain, where the veils are thin. Same as inviting them in. That's a great thing to do on Samhain or around Samhain, or even around the dark and full moons. Often people can count the moon after Samhain as the lunar Samhain. Some people count the one before, but most after. So you could do it on that moon. Yeah, I think that's everything. I'm really sorry if this has been a bit sort of blur and burbled. I haven't had any sleep really for a long time. About 5 nights now. I think I've only had a couple of hours, so my mind's a bit scrambled. And I sort of did this video at the last minute where I grabbed some time. So yeah, I hope all of you are well. All of my best wishes. And hopefully I will record another video again soon. I've got other series planned as well as this fairy one. So yeah, we'll see how that goes.